didn't say a word when my brother walked into my parents' house that Sunday with his arm in a sling and his girlfriend's hand wrapped around his good elbow like he was returning from war. I just poured myself a glass of water and sat down. My mother had made tourtière, the real kind, with pork and veal the way her own mother taught her, the way she only made it for occasions that mattered. The good plates were out. The cloth napkins. I noticed all of it, and I thought, they've been planning this for a while. I'm 31 years old. I work as a forensic accountant for a mid-sized firm in Ottawa. I find fraud. I find it in spreadsheets, in bank records, in expense reports, in the tiny inconsistencies that people think no one will ever notice. I have been doing this for 6 years. I am by every professional measure very good at it. My brother. I'll call him my brother because that's all he is to me now. A title, a biological fact, is 28. He has never held a job for longer than 14 months. He's charming in the way that people are charming when they've learned the charm is cheaper than accountability. He smiles and people forget what they were angry about. He always has a reason. He always has a story, and the story is always, in some version, someone else's fault. That Sunday in February, the story was mine. My dad cleared his throat after we'd eaten. He set down his fork the way he sets it down when he's about to say something he's already rehearsed. I've known that gesture my whole life. Your brother's been going through a hard time, he said. I looked at my brother. He looked at his plate. We know, my dad continued, that you've been doing well, the new position, the condo. He paused. We think it's time the family pulled together. My mother reached across the table and put her hand over mine. Family is family, she said. We don't leave each other behind. I asked what number we were talking about. My dad said $63,000, not a loan, a contribution, to help my brother get back on his feet, to cover what he owed, and he didn't specify to whom, not right then, and to give him a fresh start. $63,000. I had $38,000 in my TFSA. 22 in my RRSP, and a condo with a mortgage I'd been paying down aggressively for 3 years. I had built that from nothing. From a starting salary that barely covered rent in a shared apartment in Gatineau, from years of eating lunch at my desk, from saying no to trips and cars and things I wanted because I had a plan and I was executing it. I said very calmly, I don't have $63,000 to give. My mother's face shifted. Not surprise, something more like disappointment that had been preloaded, ready to deploy. You have the condo, my dad said. That's my mortgage. You could refinance. I set my fork down. I looked at my brother, who was still looking at his plate, and I thought, he knew about this. He sat through this whole meal knowing what was coming, and he didn't warn me. He let our mother make the tourtière. He let me think this was just Sunday dinner. Who does he owe the money to? I asked. There was a pause. My dad and my brother exchanged a look. Some people, my brother said finally. From before, it got complicated. Complicated how? My mother squeezed my hand. That's not important right now. What's important is, it's important to me, I said. If I'm being asked to refinance my home, I think I'm entitled to know exactly what I'm paying for. My brother's girlfriend, she'd been quiet the whole meal, picking at her food, shifted in her chair. She knew too. Everyone at this table knew except me. My dad said, your brother got involved with some people he shouldn't have. There was a debt. The interest has grown. He said a name I didn't recognize, some private loan situation that had escalated badly. If it's not settled by the end of the month, things could get physical. Physical, I repeated. They've already broken his arm, my mother said, and her voice cracked. And if I hadn't been watching her so carefully, I might have missed the way her eyes slid sideways when she said it. Just slightly. Just enough. Here is what I knew, and had known for a long time. My brother did not break his arm protecting anyone. When we were 14 and 12, 2 older boys from the neighborhood had come after me on my way home from school. My brother was with me. He ran. He left me there. I took a punch to the shoulder and screamed loud enough that someone came out of their house. My brother was home before I was, and when I told our parents, he said he'd gone to get help. He'd been getting help. Our parents believed him. I watched them believe him. And I understood, at 12 years old, that in this family, the story he told was the story that would be true. He didn't break his arm protecting me or anyone else. He made a bad bet with dangerous people, and now there was a bill. I said, I need to think about it. My dad looked relieved. My mother smiled, that warm, flooding smile she deploys when she thinks she's won. My brother finally looked up from his plate. I drove home and I did not think about whether to help. I had already decided. I thought instead about what I needed to do first. I pulled my credit report that night. This is something I do automatically now, the way other people check the weather. 6 years of forensic accounting will do that. I have alerts set up. I check manually every few months anyway, because I've seen what family fraud looks like up close, in other people's files, in the cases I work, in the quiet devastation of people who trusted someone and shouldn't have. There was an inquiry on my file, a hard pull, from a financial institution I didn't recognize, for a line of credit I had never applied for. The date was 11 days earlier. I sat at my kitchen table in the dark and I looked at that inquiry for a long time. Then I opened my laptop and I started working. The application had gone through with my name, my SIN, my date of birth, my address. The address listed was my parents' house, my old address, the one I hadn't lived at in 4 years. The application had been declined, but only because the institution's algorithm had flagged an inconsistency in the employment information. If the employment number had matched, it would have gone through. Someone had tried to open a $40,000 line of credit in my name. I didn't panic. That's the part people don't understand. When you find something like this, the panic doesn't help. The panic is a tool for people who don't know what to do. I knew exactly what to do. I had helped 3 clients walk through this process in the past 2 years. I placed a fraud alert on my credit file with both Equifax and TransUnion. I flagged the inquiry. I documented everything I had with timestamps. And then I started thinking about who had access to the information they would have needed. My SIN was on a tax document I had left at my parents' house 4 years ago when I still filed from there. My mother had always helped me organize paperwork when I was younger. She knew where things were kept. She was, by any measure, the most organized person in the family. She's also the one who cried at that table and said, "Family is family," while holding my hand. I thought about that for a long time. I want to be precise here because I think precision matters. I do not know with certainty that my mother was the one who made that application. What I know is that someone with access to documents kept at my parents' address submitted my personal information to a lender 11 days before that Sunday dinner. What I know is that the timing was not a coincidence. I made an appointment with my lawyer for the following Wednesday. Between that Sunday and that Wednesday, my mother called me 3 times. The first call was a check-in, warm and normal, asking how I was doing. The second call was to tell me my brother was really struggling, really scared, and that it would mean so much to him if I could just say yes. The third call was more pointed. She said she and my dad had talked, and they felt like I wasn't taking the situation seriously. She said, "You know what your brother did for you when you were young." She said this as fact, as established record, as if the true version had never existed. I said, "I remember what happened." There was a silence. And then she said, very quietly, "We just need you to help." I said, "I know." My lawyer is practical and thorough, and she does not emote unnecessarily. I appreciate this about her. I showed her the credit inquiry, the documentation I'd compiled, and the text messages my brother had sent me in the days following the dinner. Messages that referenced the debt in enough detail to establish that he was aware of it and that he had been present at a conversation designed to pressure me into paying it. She advised me to file a formal report with the relevant fraud division, which I did. She also helped me understand what my options were regarding the family pressure itself. There was, depending on how the next few weeks went, a potential harassment component. We talked about that. And then I told her about the condo. I had been thinking, since that Sunday, about the shape of what was happening. My parents knew I had the condo. My dad had said I could refinance. The line of credit application, if it had gone through, would have created a debt in my name that could theoretically have been leveraged in various ways. I didn't know exactly what the plan was, but I knew there was one. I had been thinking about a phrase I'd heard from a colleague years ago. He'd used it to describe a particular kind of proactive measure, not revenge, not retaliation, but the act of removing the thing that makes you vulnerable before the person who wants to use it against you can reach it. He called it a kill switch. The condo had been on my mind as a financial asset for some time. The market in Ottawa had done well. I had equity. And I had, through my work connections, a contact at a real estate investment company that did cash purchases, quick closes, flexible timelines, often used for estate sales and situations where speed mattered. I called that contact on Monday morning. On Friday afternoon, I signed the papers. I didn't tell anyone. I had arranged temporary accommodations with a close friend in the Glebe, a neighborhood I'd always liked, while I figured out my next steps. I put my furniture in storage. I updated my mailing address with Canada Post, my bank, my employer, CRA. I did not update it with my parents. My mother called me the following Sunday, exactly 2 weeks after the tortilla dinner, and said she and my dad wanted to get together. They'd like me to come by the house. My brother would be there. They were hoping I'd had time to think. I said I'd come by at 2 o'clock. I want to tell you what I felt during that drive, because I think it matters. People expect rage in stories like this, or grief, or some kind of dramatic internal storm. What I felt was something quieter than that, something close to clarity. I had spent a lot of years managing the emotional weather of that household, absorbing the shifting pressures, adjusting myself around what they needed, performing gratitude for things I'd been told were done for me. I had done this so automatically for so long that I had stopped noticing I was doing it. And then one Sunday in February, they asked me for $63,000, and someone ran my credit, and the automatic part of me just stopped. I walked into my parents' house at 2:05. My dad was in his chair. My mom was on the couch. My brother was at the kitchen table, and his girlfriend wasn't there this time, which meant this was serious. My mother had made tea. There were cookies on the table, which felt both domestic and, I don't know, like an attempt at normalcy that made my chest tighten. My dad said, "We need an answer." I sat down across from him. "I know. Your brother's situation has gotten more serious. The people he owes, they've been in contact again. We don't have a lot of time." "How much time?" "A week. Maybe less." My mother leaned forward. "We were thinking, if you can't give the cash directly, maybe we could work something through the condo. A second mortgage. Your father knows someone at a broker." There it was. I looked at my brother. "How did you get into this?" He looked at me with the same expression he's had his whole life, slightly aggrieved, slightly charming, waiting for the room to tip in his favor. "It's complicated. Uncomplicated. I made some investments that didn't work out. With some guys who, they don't operate the usual way. You borrowed from people who break arms when they don't get paid. It wasn't like that at the start, but it's like that now." My mother made a sound. My dad said my name in a warning tone. I reached into my bag and took out a folder. Inside was a printed copy of the sale confirmation for the condo, already closed, deed transferred, funds deposited. I set it on the coffee table. "I can't take out a second mortgage," I said, "because I don't own the condo anymore." The silence in that room was the most specific silence I have ever heard. My dad picked up the paper. He looked at it. He set it down. He picked it up again. "When did you—" "Friday," my mother said. "But where are you living? Somewhere else." My brother pushed back from the kitchen table. "Are you serious right now?" It wasn't a question. "The money from the sale is in an account that isn't accessible in the way you're imagining," I said. And I want to tell you something else. I reached back into my bag and took out a second piece of paper, the fraud report, the reference number clearly visible at the top. Someone applied for a $40,000 line of credit in my name 11 days before that dinner. Using my SIN, using my old address here, I set it next to the sale confirmation. I filed a report. It's being investigated. My mother's face did something I had never seen it do before. The warmth drained out of it completely. What was underneath was not what I expected. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't guilt. It was something more like calculation, cycling through options, and I recognized it the way I recognize it in documents, the pattern of someone working out where the exposure is. That has nothing to do with us, my dad said. I didn't say it did. You're implying. I'm telling you what happened. I put the papers back in my folder. I'm not going to help with the debt. I don't have the assets you were planning on using. And the fraud investigation means that any attempt to access my information going forward will be, I paused, let the word land, documented. My brother said, "So you're just done? You're just going to walk away from your family?" I stood up. "I've been in this family my whole life," I said. "I remember everything that happened in it. I remember who ran and who stayed. I remember who told the truth and who got believed anyway." I picked up my bag. "I'm not walking away from anything. I'm just not available for this anymore." My dad stood up too. He moved toward the door, not aggressively but deliberately, and I saw what he was doing. I took out my phone. "I called 911 before I came inside," I said. "The line's been open this whole time. If anyone wants to test that, they're welcome too." He stopped. I walked to the door. I opened it myself. My mother said my name. Just my name, nothing else. And she used the voice she's used my whole life. The soft one, the one that sounds like it's pulling you back towards something warm and safe. I have spent 31 years not being able to resist that voice. I closed the door behind me. That was 4 months ago. I'm renting a 2-bedroom in Westboro now. I found a place I actually love, which surprised me. I'd always thought of renting as a step backward. But there's something about not having an asset that people can try to leverage that feels like breathing. The fraud investigation is ongoing. I don't know exactly how it will end. My lawyer is managing that. I haven't spoken to my parents or my brother since that afternoon. My mother sent 3 texts in the first 2 weeks, then stopped. My brother called once from a number I didn't recognize and left a voicemail that was so precisely calibrated to make me feel guilty that I almost had to admire it. Almost. I've heard from my aunt, my mother's sister, who has always been the clearer-eyed one in that family, that my brother settled his debt somehow. I don't know the details. I didn't ask. It is not my problem. And saying that, typing it out, still feels like something I have to practice believing. It is not my problem. Someone at work asked me recently how I got so good at spotting fraud. She's newer to the field, still in the stage where she's learning to trust what the numbers are telling her instead of what she wants them to say. I told her, "You stop wanting a particular answer. You follow what's actually there. The patterns are usually the same. Someone who needed something. Someone who thought they could get away with it. A paper trail that was almost clean. Almost." She asked if it ever bothered me. Always looking for what was wrong. I thought about that Sunday in February. The good plates. The cloth napkins. The tortilla made exactly the way it was supposed to be made for an occasion that mattered. Sometimes, I said, but less than it used to. I go to the farmer's market on Saturday mornings now. The one on Parkdale. I buy more vegetables than I can eat. I've started learning to make things from scratch. Bread, mostly, which is more forgiving than it looks. I have a window that gets good light in the mornings and I drink my coffee in front of it and I don't have anywhere to be. For the first time in a long time, there is nothing in my life that someone else is trying to take. I used to think that peace was something you found. I know now that sometimes it's something you build, quietly, ahead of schedule, before anyone realizes you've already started.